You know, it's an honor and it's a privilege, really. You know, we only have one life on this earth, and the idea that, you know, if this is, aside from my children, who I think are the greatest products I've done, you know, if this is my legacy, this is a pretty darn good one to you know, be proud of, and I will own it forever. I love the idea that it's inspired children, it's inspired people, and that it may live on in future generations long after I'm not on this earth. So that's kind of cool. Thank you.
We have a question right here.
Hello, good morning. Alessandro De Simone from Italy. And watching the movie, it's impossible not to think about Peter Bogdanovich mask. And I want to know if during the writing of the novel and and the filming the movie, if you have been any references about this movie or other movies of this kind. Thank you.
Well, I'd say for me, I love Peter Bogdanovich's film Mask. I also love David Lynch's film The Elephant Man. But I never, you know, it's funny, I never saw this particular, when I read her book, those weren't my references. What I loved about her book were all the multiple points of view, that it was about this family and it was about these friends, and it wasn't just about one condition or lack thereof. So for me, my references were more, I would say, we talked about E.T. and we talked about Stand By Me and a great film, Lasse Hallström's My Life as a Dog. Those were our touchstones.
Question right here.
Lorenzo Armando from Italy. After The Perks of Being a Wallflower, what is it like to adapt someone else's material? You know, can you talk about that and, you know, treating a story that's being written by someone else?
It was equal parts harder and easier. Harder in the sense that I felt a much deeper sense of pressure to do a good job, because I knew how, you know, I think her book is way better than mine. So there was that. But there was also the fact, but easier in the sense of I had great partners for this. R.J. First and foremost, but the gentlemen on my right and left were fantastic, and they did so much work on the project and the screenplay and some of the research and development with the prosthetics even before I showed up. I mean, I walked into a movie that was going, Julia Roberts was interested, Jacob Tremblay was going to be Augie, and the script was pretty good and just needed a finishing touch, you know, ow, you know. And so it was great.
We have a question right here.
A question for Stephen. I absolutely loved the film. I wanted to ask you about directing Julia Roberts, and how does one go about that? She's so amazing, and the intense emotion that she makes everyone feel without going too far with crying. And obviously, how delighted were you to get that amazing laugh from her that we all love?
Oh, thank you. Well, here, I'll say the laugh thing first. I got the laugh because this gentleman right here said she has the most famous laugh in movie history, and you have to get the laugh. So it was a challenge, and David was brilliant, and David knows how to direct me the way maybe I know how to direct actors. So does Todd, actually. Working with Julia, and David's worked with her before, you know, it's almost like being Michael Phelps' swim coach. She's so good at what she does, and what every director, what every filmmaker knows or producer is it's not even necessarily what's on the screen. It's the things in between takes. It's the stuff she does off camera to help her fellow actors. I found her to be incredibly generous, and she could do anything. You know, I remember the first day of school, we had the walk, much like you saw it in the film, and I had this crazy idea with take 7 or whatever it was. I said, listen, can we just try it for fun just one time? Can you just like cry every step, just cry, and maybe we'll try to make it a funny moment? And it was hilarious the way she did it. And then some guy took a picture of her from a long lens, and they turned it into a tabloid cover of like, you know, she had a breakdown on the street. I'm like, no, I just said action and cut, 'cause she's great, and she's Julia Roberts. So that's my answer.
We have a question right here.
It's Christian from Germany. Good morning. It's a question to R.J. first. I once talked to an author whose book was adapted for screen as well, and he said, you know, it's like turning a cow into a can of soup, you know, in a way. And could you talk about the experience, you know, like following this? And also a question to the producers, how difficult was it to get this off the ground? Or if you have Julia Roberts on board, is it easy? Or
I will start answering, and then they can take over, because it is sort of one-two answer. It's really, ultimately you just have to start, you have to trust the people that you're working with. And that's why, the other people had approached me when the book first came out, but it was when I talked to Todd and David that I felt finally that I'd found two producers who wanted to make the kind of movie that I envisioned, which was a small and humble movie full of tenderness, and that's kind of, I remember saying that to them early on, and they said, I remember Todd saying, Raquel, I don't know how we're gonna do this movie exactly, but I promise you we will do it and that you will be happy with the end result. I promise you that. And I took him at his word, and I every step along the way, it was a long sort of production process. They optioned it almost 6 years ago. It was in 2012 that we first started talking, and one of the reasons was because they were getting all their ducks in a row, and I will let them talk about that because I think it was a complicated process.
Yeah, no movie is easy to make, that's for sure. And when David and I read this book, I looked back at my calendar, it was March 2012, it's almost 6 years ago. We both read the book and we just fell in love with it so much because it made us feel great. We were crying at the end, but we were crying tears of happiness. We were crying tears of like, wow, what amazing, this is how great people can be. And so just that feeling, that soul from the inside of how specifically this movie about a boy with a facial difference is going to get made, we have absolutely no idea. But to get that message out there in the same way that the book was hopefully going to was really a goal that we set out from the beginning. And certainly the book did. It became this giant bestseller. So that doesn't hurt to help get a movie made. And of course, when people like Julia Roberts read the book and then call us, David received a call from her agent several years ago, and she was interested, and it just kind of snowballed, and then the right pieces come into place. We went to Stephen probably 3 or 4 times to direct this movie before we actually got him. He was having his own child, and the timing wasn't exactly right. Jacob was too young at the time to actually make the movie the right way, so it all kind of worked out in the timing of it, and we're thankful to be here.
We have a question right here.
Yes, I have a question for R.J. How did you come up with the idea of writing this book?
I was sitting in front of an ice cream store about 10 years ago now, and I was with my 2 sons. My younger son was very young. He was only about 3 years old, and some people sat down next to us, and it was a little girl who had she looked just like Augie does in the book, and she had very, very severe facial difference. And my little boy, he reacted, he started to cry a little bit, and in my haste to shield her from seeing his reaction, I kind of whisked him away, and afterwards I regretted it so much. I kept on thinking about all the better ways I could have handled that situation. Simply turned to the little girl, started up a conversation, a million things that I could have done differently. But I was obsessed with that scene, and then that night, the Natalie Merchant's song Wonder came on the radio. And I don't know, it was just one of those moments that happen every once in a while where an idea comes to you, and it came to me then. I thought, okay, you know what? I'm going to write a book, and it's going to be called Wonder, and it's going to be about what it must be like to, face a world every day that doesn't know how to face you back.
And you had never written a book before?
I'd never written a book before. I'd never written a published book before. I had always, I'd always wanted to be a writer, and throughout my life, writing was sort of my little sacred secret that I didn't do for money because I had a different career, which is what I did as a stream of income. But I always wrote on my own, so I have not a million, but I have a lot of sort of early drafts or half-finished novels locked away that should never see the light of day anyway. But I've always been a writer, just never published before. This was my first book that I completed.
Question back here.
This is also a question for R.J. Palacio. I was wondering when you first noticed that the book was taking on a life of its own after it was published, and also whether the writing process was in any way cathartic. I know that also it must have been difficult because you had another career, you had children, you were waking up at 12 o'clock at night to write. So I was wondering whether you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, cathartic, yes, actually. It sounds daunting, the idea of like writing at night, but actually I looked forward to it every night after a while, because when you're writing, it's such an intimate process with no one but you and the characters you create in the middle of the night, and then at a certain point, the characters seem so real to you that you feel like, well, I have to finish this book, because no one else will ever meet these people if I don't finish, and you really feel obligated at a certain point once you're really in it. And for me, it was cathartic. Just, there were nights that it'd be 2 a.m. and I'd be writing through tears. I made myself cry all the time. It was kind of great. I forgot the other.
You might have been sleep deprived.
I was also sleep deprived, definitely, but it was a really special time, and but I don't remember the first part of your question. Sorry. Right. Well, shortly after the book was published, in a modest way. Like when the print run was, I think, 15,000 copies, which is considered a very modest print run. And we realized, I think, within about a month, when it hit the New York Times bestseller list, that there had been no major marketing money behind it. It was in the middle of the middle of the book publisher's catalog, so it wasn't one of the big books. And that kind of, it's not that it surprised everybody. It was just like, oh wow, this is the word of mouth, and that's how it built. Word of mouth through teachers and educators and just people who felt really passionate about it, and that's the moment when I thought, wow, wow, who knew that this could happen?
Sorry, another question to
Sorry.
R.J. Palacio. Thomas from German Radio ARD. How much or how concrete have you been involved in producing the film? Did you have any last word in the script and the casting, or did you even want to have a last word?
Yes. I had. These guys were amazing in bringing me into the process every step of the way. And not that they were contractually obligated, because I signed away, I optioned the book very early in the process, and you want to make a movie, cool, and I kind of signed it away. But they were so wonderful in keeping me abreast of all the happenings and trying to explain why things weren't getting made, or and then. Checking in every step of the way. And then when Stephen came on board, he brought me in even more. I mean, Stephen and I just formed a really nice relationship from the beginning, where he would call me up and ask my opinion about this or that, in terms of some casting choices and everything from would the Pullmans have a yellow sofa, to what kind of laptop sleeve would Isabel have? It was really kind of fun delving into little details that no one else but Stephen and I would really care about. And we've kind of I'm the mama bear of Wonder, and he's the papa bear, and Augie's the little baby bear.
And they're the producer bears.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like Mandy Patinkin was someone that you had wanted from the
yeah.
very beginning. Like that was your casting idea.
Yeah. I remember watching Homeland and thinking Sol Berenson would be the perfect Mr. Tushman.
This was really a lot about trust, because this movie took several incarnations before it was made in the way that it was made. We had different writers, different directors, because Stephen was unavailable. And I have to say, you had a lot of trust in us, because these things, like movies do, they come together, they fall apart, they come together, they fall apart. And you were trusting of that the whole time through every incarnation of it. And we tried to help you understand it will come together, it will happen in the right way, and it did.
Well, and I also have to say about these two gentlemen on the end, there's so much written about Hollywood these days, and I just sensed from the very beginning that I was dealing with very, very good men and very good people and very good, good-hearted, well-meaning, and just really awesome people. So putting trust in that is sort of a valuable thing, and it's something that we all I feel like I've always done. When I find someone that I think is really a great person, you know, you just kind of put your faith in them and hope for the best.
You got to live by this bracelet that I wear called Choose Kind,
Oh.
which actually, yeah.
Question back here.
Hi, I'm Becky from a charity called Changing Faces, and this is a question for all of you. Obviously, this film has huge potential to make a positive impact on the way people value difference, and there's a lovely line about changing the way people see. So could you talk to us about the positive difference in society you hope the film is going to make?
I'll start, okay. You know, it's kind of a high bar to think about what kind of difference a movie might make in society, but all I can hope personally for all of us is that the movie does something like what the book has done. And I think the book, I remember that first time I finished reading it, and when David and I were talking to each other, and I just felt better. I just felt better. And I always think that, you know, we have the ability as filmmakers, and therefore a little bit of the responsibility as filmmakers, to make movies that when you leave the theater, you feel a little bit better than you did when you went into the theater. And this really embodies that. I think when you leave this movie, you just feel uplifted. You feel like you want to do good things. So, you know, I'm thankful that we got to participate and really meet all these wonderful and amazing and beautiful people in the craniofacial difference community. And we have. I mean, we've spent a lot of time with doctors and patients and families and just all kinds of people that we've become really close with and friends with. But and I'm glad that will shine a light on the beauty of that community. But really for everybody, and as R.J. was saying, you know, we're deluged daily with just the negativity in humanity right now. And so why not spend some time with the positivity?
Oh, actually, one of the unforeseen wonders of everything that's happened, at least for me, is the endorsement and the sort of the embracing I've received and wonder has received from the craniofacial community, both in the United States, here. You know, when I was in Italy last year, I met with the My Face in Italy, and the idea that my book and now this movie has in any way made their lives somewhat easier in terms of how they're received and perceived. And I had a dad tell me that he had a son who had Treacher-Collins syndrome, and he told me that you know, going to the playground used to be kind of, you know, an ordeal. You know, his son never wanted to go out. He just didn't want to deal with the stares and the questions and sort of the rude comments. And he said, but now with Wonder, it's totally changed everything, that he likes to go out, he likes to go to the park, and people will come up to him and say, hey, oh, do you have what Augie Pullman has? And he said it's just changed him completely, and that, more than anything, we were talking about legacy before, that is a legacy that I will own and I'm very proud of and touched by.
Yeah, I'll say for me, if you wanted everyone, that line, that's one of the lines, basically most of the screenplay and the great lines in the screenplay are from R.J.'s book. I was able to write that line, and it came from personal experience, the idea of if Augie can't change the way he looks, maybe we change the way we see. And I think that first and foremost, I think that this could do a lot for people's awareness of the condition and awareness of families and struggles, but also far beyond struggle, triumph and beauty. And I know for a fact because the first person that I changed was me. You know, the process of making this, and like what Todd and Davis talked about and RJ in working on it, you know, when you live in this world for, in my case, I'd say a year and a half, and fairly nonstop for about a year and a half now, I'm a far better person today than I was when I started. I didn't expect to feel that way. I'm a better father, and a better husband, a better person, and I think a better artist. And it's a great thing when you are aware of something. And I know for the power of movies can change a lot, and I think this movie could do a lot to change hearts and minds. I really do.
I think for me, I was involved in a television show many years ago called Monk, dealing with the OCD, and that show did a lot to bring light to the condition of OCD. And I think any time that we can break the stigma of what these things are, we've done a great service. And I think this film, hopefully, it will do that and bring to light, you know, differences, not just facial differences, but all kinds of differences, racial, religious, everything. I mean, that's really what the book is about in a much larger vein, which is just let's accept people for who they are. So.
We have time for 2 more quick questions. The first one back here.
Okay, this is a question for Stephen. The movie's got some very emotional moments. Were there any in particular that were very difficult for you to direct, to be filmed?
None in particular that were difficult. You know, I had a great cast. I was really lucky, and they had chemistry, and they trusted each other, and they supported each other, and I made sure. My philosophy is, I know a lot of directors talk about getting a performance out of an actor. I like to create an atmosphere where people feel free to give one. And it's much easier, it's much better manners, and I think ultimately leads to a better performance. So no, nothing in particular.
Can I point out one moment that maybe you'll recall? There was a scene that we shot, which was Augie and the parents in bed, and it was a scene that we actually filmed. And when the scene was done, and Stephen's like, I'm not feeling this. There's like something off here. And he spent a lot of time thinking about it. And the scene that ended up in the movie was Augie going downstairs after Daisy had died, and Nate's sitting at that table alone, and they share an intimate moment. And that was Stephen's creation after seeing a scene that he didn't think quite worked. So kind of just seeing him kind of agile on his feet. And I'm not saying it was a difficult thing to shoot, but there was certainly that moment when you're like, I'm just not feeling what I need to feel, and you came up with an alternate idea.
Last question right here.
Hello, this is Patrick from Germany. A question for David and Todd. How difficult and expensive is it to cast Chewbacca in your film?
Free.
It was pretty easy. We have a long-standing relationship with Kathy Kennedy, who now runs the Star Wars Empire. And it was an easy phone call to Kathy to say, could we use this? It's actually a big part of the book and a big part of the character's identification. And she said, yes, send me the script and let us look at it, and called back and said, absolutely.
It's really a testament
to
the beauty of the book, really. Who wouldn't want to be a part of it?
Yes.
Well, and I just want to say that I mean, when people ask me if I'm happy with the adaptation, it's like, not only am I happy, I'm thrilled, because they've taken one medium, they've taken this, narration, and it was elements like that, these sort of magic, realist elements, these moments of whimsy that aren't from the book, are inspired or sparked by it, but are the sort of cinematic magic that came together through Stephen and also the other scriptwriters, and that really kind of made this movie, I think, something its own work of art. It's not just a translation or an adaptation, a straight adaptation of my book. It's unique unto itself because they added, it's like alchemy, they added other stuff to it, and those little moments are I think what make the movie so magical.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to ask everyone to stay seated. We'll get our next press conference started in just a moment. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey You Guys!